The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. The Bridegroom. How beautiful you are, my love. How beautiful you are. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats frisking down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes as they come up from the washing. Each one has its twin, not one unpaired with another. Her lips are a scarlet thread, and your words enchanting. Your cheeks behind your veil are halves of pomegranate. Your neck is the Tower of David, built as a fortress, hung around with 1,000 bucklers, and each the shield of a hero. Your two breasts are two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed among the lilies. Before the dawn wind rises, before the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh, to the hill of frankincense. You are wholly beautiful, my love, and without a blemish. Come from Lebanon, my promised bride. Come from Lebanon. Come on your way. Lower your gaze from the heights of Amana, from the crest of Senir and Hermon, the haunts of lions and the mountains of leopards. You ravish my heart, my sister, my promised bride. You ravish my heart with a single one of your glances, with one single pearl of your necklace. What spells lie in your love, my sister, my promised bride? How delicious is your love, more delicious than wine. How fragrant your perfumes, more fragrant than all other spices. Your lips, my promised one, distill wild honey. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the scent of your garments is like the scent of Lebanon. So the first line, before the dawn wind rises, before the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh, to the hill of frankincense. So there's two interpretations of the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense that I want us to think about. And I'm going to start with the one from Gilbert of Hoyland. And in his translation, there's an added phrase. The bridegroom says that he will go for his own sake. And I could not find the actual version of scriptures that Gilbert of Hoyland must have been using. I could not find a single one that had that phrase in it. But the way that he talks about what that phrase means to us coming from the lips of Jesus is so beautiful that I want to read to you a little bit about what he says about that. So he is speaking of myrrh and frankincense, really in the sense of incense, and our prayers being incense that rises up to God. Okay. So he says, coming from the bridegroom, I will go then, he says, for my own sake. I will go for my own sake. Not only for hers will I go. It is not she alone who derives joy from my arrival, but to me, no less does my arrival communicate her eagerness. Sweet to me, joyful to me is my visit to her. I go now for my own sake. It profits me to go in this way. It causes me delight. Therefore, I go for my own sake. Now a sweet fragrance breathes for me from the mountain of myrrh. Therefore, I will go allured by the perfume. I will go for my own sake, because my delight is to tarry with my bride. And I just thought that was so beautiful. And again, just really emphasizes this aspect of the bridegroom's love for us, that he delights in us, that he receives joy from our loving him. This idea that he goes to the mountain of myrrh. And so in interpretation that we're going to talk about for the mountain of myrrh is the mountain of suffering. Myrrh was the incense, was the ointment that was used to anoint and prepare for burial. And so when the three kings came, and one of the things that they gave him was myrrh, this was a foreshadowing of his death. And so for Jesus to say that he goes for his own sake because it brings him joy, that it's his delight, not only are we speaking then of him coming to us in our hearts when we're in prayer, to this mutual relationship, that prayer is this communication between spouses, right? This intimacy happens in our prayer. But he's also saying that I go to the mountain of myrrh. I go to the palm tree of the cross because it's my joy. It's my delight. I am so passionately in love with my creature that I give up my life so that they may have eternal life. So I want to talk about this verse 4:6 in terms of the mountain of suffering and the hill of frankincense, which frankincense was the incense that foreshadowed his glory, his divinity. Frankincense was for royalty. So here we have that theme that without the cross, there can't be divinization, there can't be glory, that for the glory set before him, Christ endured the cross. And this is what he calls all of us to endure the suffering and tribulations of this life, keeping our eyes focused on what is above, focused on the glory to come. So when we talk about the mountain of myrrh as suffering, and he's saying till the day break and the shadows retire, that he won't wait for morning to come, that he's going now. He's running eagerly to this mountain of myrrh, that he didn't just go willingly, but he went filled with passionate love, with joy. If you remember, if you've seen The Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie, how when he embraces the cross, the look of love and almost joy on his face, because he knew his eyes were focused on the glory to come. His eyes were focused on the fact that by enduring this cross, he was redeeming us and he was opening the gates of heaven. He was opening the doors to the eternal wedding banquet, to union forever with his brides, his promised brides. And it really brings to my mind the Last Supper, when he says to the disciples that he has desired for so long to have this meal with them. And when I ponder that, I think, what does it mean for so long to him who is outside of time, to him who existed before time even existed, right? How long has he been desiring to eat this Passover meal, to sacrifice his body and blood, to give us the Eucharist? Because this is how we know union with our bridegroom here on earth, right? This is where we come into union with him. The one flesh, one spirit union is in the Eucharist. So what passion and desire, and for how long has he been desiring for each one of you to come to him, to come away, to come from Lebanon and to be one with him? And the word that always comes to my mind is eros. And we've talked about this before, Pope Benedict's quote about eros being that force that pulls, that draws, that compels the lover to transcend himself, to come out of himself, to go wherever it takes to be with the one he loves. And this is the kind of love, Catherine of Siena calls it mad, crazy love, that drove Jesus first to the nut orchard, right? If we look at the passage later in the song, in chapter 7, he says that he came down to the nut orchard to see what was budding. So he came, his desire, his eros, drew him out of heaven to come down first to the nut orchard of Mary's womb. And that is the first place where he married our humanity, that he became one with us. Divinity and humanity became one in the womb of Mary. And this same desire, he says in that passage, then hurled him on the chariot of his people to become their prince. So it's the same eros then that drew him to the mountain of suffering, the mountain of myrrh, to the marriage bed of the cross. So it's a new way to think, for me, to think about the passion of Christ, right? The passion, his physical suffering, passion means to suffer. And so his physical suffering in his passion, what we've come to think of as his passion, the scourging and the crucifixion and all of that, was driven by passionate love, by his passionate love for us, this aching, longing desire to redeem us and be one with us. And so this is what allowed him to endure the suffering on the mountain of myrrh that then led to the hill of frankincense, that led to his glory, to his resurrection, to his ascension, that leads to our glory, to our divinization. And so he asks us to follow him, to follow him. He's calling to his bride to come. And where is he? He's on this mountain of myrrh and this hill of frankincense. And he's calling her to come and join him. And so he's asking us to pick up our cross and follow him, to come to where he is. And he can look down. If you look at the song here and you see that he calls her to come to the mountain of myrrh, the hill of suffering, and he says he will go there, right? And it's when he's there that there's this line that sometimes almost seems out of context, because it says, I'm going to read it to you again just so we get this right. So he says, before the dawn wind rises, before the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh, to the hill of frankincense. The next line is, you are wholly beautiful, my love, and without a blemish. And then he calls for her to come and join him. And so if we think about that, what I see is a picture of Jesus on the mountain of myrrh, on the cross, looking down at all of us, right? He could see all of us and saying, now you are whole again. Now you are wholly beautiful and without a blemish because of my redemptive act. Because by willingly, with love and desire, mounting the marriage bed of the cross, I am righting the wrongs that were done under the foot of the first apple tree, when Adam and Eve fell from grace, when Adam and Eve sinned and blemish was given to all of humanity. But now my act, the new Adam with the new Eve standing here below me, participating in my redemptive act. Now we are righting that wrong. Redemption has come, and once again, you are wholly beautiful and without a blemish. And this is what we need to remember, that he says this truly to each and every one of us. He looks at each of you and says, you are wholly beautiful and without a blemish, because he looks at you and he sees through the mud and the stains and sees your soul the way he created you, in his image and likeness. And the more we draw into this intimacy with him, the more that we unite every act of our day with him, the more that we become one with him, then the more truly we become radiant as he is, the more truly his beauty shines out from within us. So as we grow in the spousal relationship with him, we can think of it this way. It's really his own beauty that he's admiring in us, because we are being transformed more and more into an image of Christ, into an image of the Blessed Mother. And so if it makes you uncomfortable to think this line used to totally throw me, it's like, nope, you can't be saying that to me. Nope, can't, I'm not listening, right? But when I think about it, that maybe as I grow in virtue, as I work with him, come to know him and love him even more, and I draw closer and closer to the Blessed Mother and ask her to make me all teachable, to be the iconographer who writes an image of herself and her son on me, that when he looks at me, that's what he's seeing. He's seeing their work in me, their beauty in me. That my fragrance cast a spell over him because it's his fragrance in me now. It always goes back to that we can do nothing apart from him. And it was his redemptive act, his racing, his running up the mountain of myrrh that makes us wholly beautiful.